This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the Alpena City Council meeting of June 20th, 2022. Call the order, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Nowak.
Here.
Councilmember Wolchek.
Here.
And Mayor Walagora.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Always wanted to do the sign of.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Nowak.
Yes.
Councilmember Wolchek.
Yes.
And Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, I have a proposed modification to said agenda. We'll take a update on the DPI situation under communications and petitions.
Moved. Second.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilmember Nowak.
Yes.
Councilmember Wolchek.
Yes.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Approval of the minutes for regular and closed sessions of June 6, 2022. Any issues, changes?
None.
All right, citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed 5 minutes each to address your concerns. If you'd like to do so tonight, it's the only time you'll be able to address the council. Please come to the podium and state your name and address and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Diane O'Connor and my address is Alpena, Michigan. Do you need a street as well?
Yes, ma'am.
809 South 3rd Avenue. And I'm really happy to learn I have 5 minutes because I thought it was 3. So I can talk a lot slower than I planned on, which I'm really happy about. So I was one of the organizers for a March for Our Lives event held here in Alpena on June 11th. The march coincided with marches of the same occurring across our country to honor victims of gun violence and to advocate for legislative change. As an organizer, I obtained city and county permission to gather on the courthouse lawn and march through the downtown area. It was anticipated there would be an assembly of anti-protesters, but what was not anticipated was the protesters would bring semi-automatic assault-style weapons and behave in a threatening manner to the marchers. 4 of these men positioned themselves downtown in an area to intersect with the planned march route. Their weapons were visibly loaded with magazine clips capable of delivering 30 bullets in under 30 seconds. So a total of 120 bullets altogether. I applaud the Alpena News for printing a front page photo of these men, and while shocking, a photo cannot fully translate the emotions and sounds that would accompany such a picture. The emotions were fear or even terror, particularly for mothers who had their children with them on that day. The sounds were a mixture of vulgarities and profanities from these men, along with threats towards specific demographic groups in our community. While these men were exercising their U.S. constitutional right to gather and their Michigan constitutional right of open carry, they did not uphold the legal obligation incumbent on the carrier in that they brandished these weapons. Brandishing, as defined by our state constitution, would be pointing or waving a gun at anyone or displaying a firearm with the intent to cause fear in another person. It can reasonably be stated that angry men carrying loaded, semi-automatic assault-style weapons while yelling obscenities and vulgarities at peacefully assembled people do intend to incite fear. This happened in our town during a busy afternoon in front of visitors and locals. What an unfortunate image for our community. And of note, while hundreds of such marches were occurring on this very day across our country with hundreds of thousands of participants, I was unable to find a correlative incident occurring anywhere else in the country, but it happened here. So what can we do? When you come with a problem, come with some helps or suggestions. I would urge City Council and local law enforcement to investigate this occurrence. I would suggest an open forum for our community with law enforcement and local legal experts on how to keep our community safe from future threats, because this will happen again. These men were given tacit approval to do what they did. Finally, I would urge City Council to adopt the March for Our Lives resolution to support stronger gun laws. The same resolution this council voted against in 2018. As a concluding statement, I was there. I was terrified. And I didn't have children with me. And the fear only escalated when I got home. And I am still fearful for our community and what this meant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. O'Connor.
Angie Skiba, 635 River, and I'll address the comment that she just made. I watched the police go up and talk to people. I was told it was completely peaceful, and the people, it is an open carry state. It was completely legal. They had their cards, and it is open carry, and they were doing nothing wrong. And the police went and checked them. So if they were not corrected at that time. I'm going to change the subject. I have received an envelope regarding the DDA proposal to include River Street. I received a 3-page color brochure with a QR code and then a letter stating what our taxes, how they would increase. There's 5 lines that are printed here. The mission of the Alpena DDA is to correct and prevent deterioration within the established DDA district, encourage historic preservation. This I'm concerned about, and to acquire and dispose of interest in real and personal property. That's a concern. Create and implement development plans in the district, promote the economic growth of the district. So I'll start with to whom it may concern. I heard the DDA was proposing an expansion and including many people on River Street in this, and the Alpena News said we can opt out. As an entity, we, the people, are choosing to opt out. It was also on the webpage that we can opt out. We are preparing responses telling the DDA, no, we are not interested in becoming part of their plan. We choose to opt out. I received the envelope with that, and I'm questioning why the printed questionnaire was not included. And I'm thinking that that was a deceitful act because many people don't have a computer. They don't use them. And it was very upsetting. Was that done so people would not respond, not be able to respond, not know about that, or simply they'd bypass and go, oh, they didn't respond, so it must be a positive. So I am just concerned that I am not paying taxes for that. This is considered double dipping in my book. I pay taxes. If I'm correct, the city council gives the DDA money already, which I've already paid in. The city uses my taxes. This would now be double dipping. And I don't think that's correct. Excuse me. I think that they went ahead and they printed everything, even a color brochure, but didn't bother to put the questionnaire in. I found it wrong. The DDA is partially funded by the city, correct? No. How are they funded then?
I don't want to go into a,
Okay. I thought I read that they got some money from the city.
it's a tax capture of the tax base that increases after the DDA is established. So if the DDA is established in 1980,
Mhm.
the city gets the taxes that of the base in 1980 from here on out, and any increase in that tax base goes to the DDA. So your city tax dollars don't go to the DDA, no.
Not directly. Okay. So how do we opt out is a question I have. And I personally see a huge amount of foot traffic up and down River Street from Lamar Park and the homeless shelter. And I've had to have the police come and remove people. They use my water faucet all the time. I have to lock my water faucet, have them physically removed because they were sleeping there. I don't want any more foot traffic, and I don't need any of that increase. The DDA meets at 3 p.m. And I don't know how working people are supposed to attend any of these meetings. I received a map and a list, and several of the people on there would not be participating in any taxes. There's the Boys and Girls Club, Fowler Apartments, Senior Apartments, and we're not interested in partaking. The tax amount was printed what it would be. It didn't say for how many years. It said the tax amount. So I'm to assume that that would remain that forever. I doubt that to be correct. I think that it would be possibly changing, and that's unacceptable. I'd like to know what on the DDA plan and what your involvement with the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, are we being trying to be pushed out on River Street and trying to make changes? And the line that says in there, acquire and dispose of interest in real and personal property, that is the part where I'm getting at. So I am asking you, as the officials that we have elected, that you would vote no and represent the people and vote no on that and not support that for taxing people that are not interested. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janice Cal. I live at 621 River Street. I am here in regard to the extra taxation. I respectfully address the city council regarding this. This is a specific part of the city that will be given the DDA the authority to tax us. They are asking for 4% extra tax at this time. Since when can one private entity tax a private citizen? Okay, this I feel is an act of outright discrimination against a private sector. Please note, there are other tax issues coming up, but the voters can vote on them. We will just pay outright. This is so the DDA can qualify business to obtain grants and free money. In the olden days, the businessmen built up their own business themselves, not by burdening a private sector of the citizens of the city and asking them to pay. So basically, they can get free money, loans, etc. Have they considered a bank ever? The bank is wonderful. Now, next to their next comment on there, encourage historic preservation. Take a look at the homes. They are not as stately as the houses on State Street, but they are all kept up by these people. If not for these people that have kept up these homes, this area would have been a slum area. Where were they when Fletchers were spewing out garbage in the river and we lived there and put up with this? Every Sunday morning at 6:30, my husband had gone down to the city, he'd gone to the police. Well, we can't do anything about this until he finally spoke to a conservation officer from Gaylord and gave them the pictures of the White River every Sunday morning at 6 and 6:30. Then that was when they received their taxation fine. The next one on there is encourage historic preservation. This section are all homes owned by second and third generation families. Other of us have lived there for 25 and 30 years and kept these homes up to the best of our ability, including homes kept up by widows, single women. This extra tax that they want will pose a burden on those that have lost their husbands. This is meant to chase everybody out of there so they can get this property. We are a historic district. We have been here. Oh, and then this is the one that really gets me. Acquire and dispose of real and personal property. This is a very veiled, ambiguous statement. Whoever wrote this was very good. If passed, note, they can acquire and dispose. You are opening a book so they can come in and do a condemnation hearing on private people's property. Say this is your home and it was worth $80,000. They can come in a condemnation hearing and say, well, we think it's only worth $8,000 or $18,000. So this is what you get. Goodbye. They can choose any amount. Or ex parte, they can say, we're claiming this for public use. And that is another matter. There's the possibility of a condemnation for that. What about the senior apartments and the other ones? They want us out and will do anything to get their goal. Discriminating against us can lead to future problems, especially for the fact that they want property. They will be their own entity. And on this, I tell you, give you an example. Florida did not realize what they did when they signed over the rights to Disneyland. Disneyland is its own private entity, kind of like the downtown. Okay, they cannot get that property back, and we were told, same thing, we can't opt out. There will be serious consequences in the future from this. You're giving a private entity of citizens who tax other citizens. You're giving them the right to that we have to pay taxes for what they want, not us. We should be protected by you, the city council that we elected, not our rights sold out from under us. We voted you in. We should be protected against this discrimination. If your parents or grandparents lived there, would it make a difference? Oh, I'm sure it would. You have jurisdiction to quash this now before it proceeds to something else. Please do not sell out the private citizens' rights. And we request that you do not sell us down the river. Thank you for your time.
My name is Kenneth McWilliams. I live at 10080 US Highway 23 North, Lot 8. I'm here today on behalf of the kids in our community on what's happened this weekend and the assistance that most of our parents have had problems with getting this weekend. There was an issue at a hotel along with a gentleman's house that our kids were forced to take drugs and drink, and there was an overdose involved. At what point can we get help for our kids when we try to make reports and we can't find out which officer's doing it, or we just get the runaround? At what point do our kids matter that we care enough to step up and stop things like this happening when this gentleman's had an issue with this stuff in the past and he's still walking the streets today? I've talked to numerous officers with no response on anything. They don't want to comment on anything or even take reports with certain things. This is a problem that we have with our community, and I'm not the only one that sees it and has an issue that if we don't get help, we as a community are going to stand up and figure this out one way or another, because our kids' safety is what matters. My daughter was one of them that was there that was forced to drink, and I'm irate. If something's not done, we need to take some type of steps to do something one way or another, because this is it. My kids, I used to believe my kids would be safe in this community. I don't even want my kids in this community anymore because it's changed that much. It's sad that we as a community can't even come together to protect what we should. Our future, our rights, everything. I'm asking for help, an investigation, and more than what's been put into it, because it's not enough. When I've been trying all weekend to make a police report because I go pick up my daughter from the Ramada Inn because she's drunk, because she's forced to drink or to take drugs, kids are kicked out because they're not doing that. And then a gentleman even has his own daughter involved in it, helping out, whatever. These girls, they're all girls, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls, and we have no clue if sexual things are going on or not. But as a parent, we should be concerned.
Right. Thank you. Obviously complete surprised as to what you're talking about, but I'll certainly follow up on that, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Burnaugh. I live at 244 Helen, and I was one of the two mothers with small children who attended the March for Our Lives with Diane on June 11th. I come to you not just as a concerned citizen, but most importantly to me as a mother of two strong, beautiful daughters. Violet is 4 and Willow is 10 months. As their mother, I feel it's important now more than ever that I set an example for them by being here today. I want to paint a picture for you of what happened on that day through the eyes of a mother. This was to be a peaceful rally, or at least it was for us on the courthouse side of the street. The counter-protesters packing weapons demonstrated loudly and lewdly that this event for us would become the complete antithesis of peaceful. We marched down Chisholm chanting, "Choose kids, not guns." A reasonable chant. Joined at the front of our procession by a friend of mine and a fellow mother of two the same age as mine. We tried to ignore the lone man who left the group at the Essex building and followed, loudly yelling vitriol. It was not until we reached Culligan Plaza to regroup that I noticed this lone man had managed to acquire an AR-15 and 3 friends bearing the same weapon. They stood directly across from the street from me and my children, their hands never leaving their weapons. Many thoughts ran through my mind at that moment, and I want to share them with you. First was, is today the day that my children and I become a statistic? How do I know that these men will not shoot us for just being here? Were they riled up at their own gathering before they even arrived at Culligan Plaza? I began doing the math in my head as to how many bullets could kill us before the police arrived from the 1.5 blocks away that I kept my eyes on. I remembered Officer Hamp telling us at the courthouse that the police would be a presence, but would only intervene if our lives were directly threatened, verbally or with guns raised to shoot. How many of us would be dead by the time they made it to us? I questioned how quickly my husband and I could shield our children should a shooting occur. I remembered how many bullets an AR-15 could shoot in 30 seconds and knew that no police gun would ever be fast enough to protect us. I began to wonder about how the news would talk about this potential tragedy and people's reactions to the death of my family, friends, and neighbors. I thought of the people watching the news, sadly shaking their heads as they hear of our fate, saying, "What a shame," and then go back to scrolling through social media, hashtag thoughts and prayers. We would just be another shooting in America, another mass murder in a country out of control. Are the lives of our children so cheap? Does the value of a person's access to a gun outweigh the value of a child's life? I was 14 when Columbine happened. I'm 36 now. It hasn't changed, and it's only getting worse. My thoughts went from fearful to angry as I realized the real reason the men across the street from us decided to meet us here was that with brandishing their guns was to scare us. They wanted to demonstrate that it was in that moment they had the power. Intimidation. If it meant scaring little children, women, and elderly people, they would do it gladly. I do not stand for bullies and haven't since I was a child. It reaffirmed why I went to this rally and why I took my family. We resumed our march, but I remained vigilant, my eyes always watching the guns across the street from me and my children. I tried to remain silent to their hateful rhetoric, but they began directing it at my husband and my children. I yelled to them, "Could you please be civil? We have children over here." But they only laughed at me and continued. I spent the rest of the weekend talking to my husband about all that we had experienced that day. We had considered waiting to attend any more rallies or related events until we have life insurance established for the two of us. Life insurance. I want to leave you all today with a thought, and it happens to be the first thought I had when I saw the men with AR-15s. Ask yourself this: is today the day that Alpena becomes a statistic of another mass shooting? I want you to think about it the next time you go to work, a meeting, the grocery store, church, or just drop your kids off at school. Is today the day that myself, my family, my community becomes a statistic? Please hug your kids today a little tighter and tell them you love them.
Kelly? No, let's just keep this civil, and applause is just not acceptable. Next.
Andrew Burnwell, 244 Helen Street. How much are they paying you to be here? That's what was shouted at me by armed men as I crossed Chisholm Street on Saturday, June 11th, with my wife and our 2 daughters. I joined March for Our Lives to share my revulsion at the continuing tragedies that plague us almost daily in this country. I thought it was my choice to be there. When I heard those words, clarity overtook me. I understood that it wasn't just my choice that put me there that day. I was where I needed to be, standing between my children and a man with a gun. My 4-year-old loves rallies. The energy, the people, she lights up and shines. She brightens the entire world around her. Her name is Violet. She and her sister Willow are everything to me. There's no politics here. And I understand that hardline beliefs are indelible to one's identity. So understand when I say that the hardest line I draw is the safety of my children. We began our march from the courthouse. Violet on my shoulders, joining in chants, smiling from ear to ear. Willow, 10 months old, in the stroller in front of me. One man followed us across the street. The gathering at Culligan Plaza was impromptu. A quick stop to gather our group, ensure that we stayed on built together in both proximity and message. Unplanned, but nevertheless an opportunity to read and reflect on the names of fallen children, victims of gun violence. As names rang through the air, followed by their age, granting this haunting perspective. This was the moment they appeared. Holding my 4-year-old's hand, hearing the names of murdered children, I stared across the street at the same type of weapons that had been used to murder them. These men joined the man that followed us, handing him what I can only assume was his own AR-15. It was at this moment that I realized this man hadn't been following us. He hadn't been engaging in a peaceful counter-protest. This man had been hunting us, ensuring that he and his friends could elicit the most intimidation possible at the perfect time. The actions of these men was unacceptable. The inaction, even apathy of those sworn to protect us, inexcusable. And the later acceptance, even adulation from certain people who are running for office to represent us, that was heinous. I yield the remainder of my time. God bless America. God protect our children, because we clearly aren't willing to.
My name is Jackie Gonzalez. I own my home at 625 River Street, and I've lived there since 1996. I'm completely opposed to having my taxes increase to fund this downtown development. These upgrades to businesses should not be on my dime. This is something that everyone can attend and enjoy, but it shouldn't be funded by just a select few. I'm not interested in their bike racks being put into my residential neighborhood or their hanging baskets. Their cosmetic curb appeal to these businesses shouldn't be funded by me and my neighbors. 3 of us in this neighborhood are widows. We're on a fixed income with 2 that are retired. And again, this is something that everyone in this community can attend and shouldn't be the burden financially of this few they've selected. It is a residential area. I do not want any more foot traffic for bike racks, parking. We've already had issues since they put the bridge in and the downtown development has happened. We've had drug deals that have gone bad, that they actually took it to my backyard, as well as hiding in my back entrance with my 2 kids at home. This is residential. If I wanted to live by bars and downtown drinking, I would probably rent one of their overpriced apartments. It's their business. It is not my financial responsibility to give curb appeal at all on my dime, and don't bring it to my neighborhood. My grandchildren play there and shouldn't have to compete with unwanted traffic, bike racks. And yes, I am one of those widows that have invested every dime I have in my home. I'm alone. And now I worry that they're retracting, saying that our ability to opt out, well, that was a misprint. That's not what they said. And I do not feel that after investing this much into my home, that the downtown development should be able to come along and, as was mentioned earlier, condemnation or eminent domain. This is a residence, not your downtown drinking area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deb Spleet. I live at 617 River Street. Some of you may have known my late husband. If not, you missed a heck of a man. He loved the city and the community. He was an ambassador for this city. He loved cutting those ribbons at new and renewed businesses. I understand that taxes are inevitable. That's what they say. Two things in life guaranteed, death and taxes. But one thing my husband instilled in me and his son when he was 8 years old, when he died, was if you want something, you work for it. You work, you get the money, you buy it yourself. You should never let somebody else carry the burden of what you want. He was a Cohen MC for the MDA for 16 years. He loved this community. But I can guarantee you, he wouldn't want this. Even if he was still alive and an ambassador, he would not agree to what is going on in this community. I live in a house that's been in the generation for 3 years. My son will be the 4th generation that has lived in that house. You talk about saving historic buildings. What about my house? It's been in my family for over 100 years. So you're just going to wipe out my family and my house because you don't consider it a historical building, an historical plot? In closing, I would like to say my son just turned 18 this year. He is really, really excited to vote this year. I told him to research your candidates, make sure you know what they want and what you want on the state, national, and local level. Thank you for your time.
Michael Lamar, 713 River Street. I won't go into everything I was going to talk about because it's been covered quite a bit, but I too am concerned about what the DDA wants to do to our residential neighborhood. And since the 600 block was represented, I guess I'm representing the 700 block. So the few neighbors I have talked to on the 700 block are also against this. So I don't want to talk too long and take up too much of your time, but my wife and I both are against this proposal of establishing the downtown in a residential area. There's nothing for us to gain. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Sam Rumbles, 1263 Long Rapids Road. I'm speaking on a different topic that I believe will be a topic of discussion later about closing down a portion of the alleyway between Second and Third Avenue between Chisholm and River there. There's a few different reasons why I'd like to voice my support for closing down these portions of the alleyway. The first being safety. Ever since I was a kid walking down this alleyway myself, almost getting hit by a car, I've witnessed it many times. People driving their own personal vehicles, or even any given delivery truck who doesn't have quite enough time to just go around the block may not have enough time to stop for a family enjoying ice cream for their walk downtown. Lots of close calls. I haven't witnessed anyone get hit yet, but also people turning the wrong way, all sorts of safety issues for people and those buildings with those cars driving through. Of course, the easy thing to talk about would be making our town a better place to spend time and enjoy what we already have as a beautiful downtown, making it a little bit better. So I don't think I need to talk about that much more. I think that's obviously a good thing, but I just don't want the safety part of all of this to be overlooked, because that's really my biggest concern watching that every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Anyone else? Live. Anyone out there, Charlie? All right. We certainly appreciate all the remarks this evening, and we'll follow up on what we can. And yeah, really appreciate it. We haven't had a voice like this in our room in quite some time. All right, we'll continue on. We have a long consent agenda this evening. Excuse me. A is bills to be allowed in the amount of $415,919.12. Service agreement. B is a service agreement with the Huron Humane Society. C is a service agreement with Target Alpena Development Corporation. D is a service agreement with Thunder Bay Arts Council. E is budget amendment request for the Fire EMS Department of an increase in expenditure of $28,000. F is a budget amendment request for the Parks Department of an increase in expenditure of $73,881. G is a purchase agreement extension with WSSA LLC. H is a cleaning contract extension, and I is a performance locker agreement renewal.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Sorry, we can note.
Councilmember Noah,
Yes.
Councilmember Wolchek,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next, I have a proclamation this evening. This is Amateur Radio Week. Whereas amateur radio operators are celebrating over a century of the miracle of the human voice broadcast over the airways, and whereas amateur radio provides a platform to develop innovative technologies in communications, and whereas amateur radio has continued to provide a bridge between peoples, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas, and whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of community service, both in emergencies and in other local organizations throughout these decades, and whereas these amateur radio services are provided wholly uncompensated, and whereas these same individuals have further demonstrated their value in public assistance by providing free radio communications for local parades, bike-a-thons, walk-a-thons, fairs, and other charitable public events, and whereas the city of Alpena recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams, who also serve as weather spotters in the Skywarn program of the U.S. Government Weather Bureau, and whereas the ARRL Amateur Radio Field Day exercise will take place on June 25th and 26th, 2022, and is an emergency preparedness exercise and demonstration of the radio amateur skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communications without further infrastructure being required, and that's at the fairgrounds. Now, therefore, I, Matthew J. Walagora, by the virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Alpena, do hereby proclaim June 20th to the 26th as Amateur Radio Week in Alpena. And a couple of gentlemen from that group are here.
Back all the way out the window.
Yeah, Dick's going to just make a couple of comments.
Mayor Walagora, council members, and city officials, on behalf of the Thunder Bay Amateur Radio Club, I want to thank you for taking time to recognize the amateur radio community here in Alpena. Thunder Bay Amateur Radio Club has been in existence since 1961, so we're 61 years this year. And Art, who was with me, was one of the original members as a high school student, so he brings a lot of experience, and we do have original members in the club today. We will be participating in Field Day, which is going to be at the county fairgrounds. And as the proclamation said, we set up emergency communications without any other infrastructure. And it's kind of like a contest or a fun time where we contact hundreds of stations all around. There's thousands of hams will take place this weekend across Canada and US. So just kind of a nice day, a nice outing. And we'd like to extend an invitation to Mayor Walagora, council members, and city officials to stop by anytime after 2 o'clock on Saturday. And this year is not going to be raining like it was last year, so it should be a little bit better. And it was a little tough last year, but anyway, I want to thank you for everybody for listening and invite even the audience or the people listening online to stop by. Thank you.
All right, next is report of officers. First up is the second reading of Ordinance 22-477, which amends Chapter 94, Article 1 in general, Sections 94-2, Parking Violations Bureau.
Consistent with council policy, this would not be read a second time unless any of the individual members would want me to review it. So it's just yay or nay at this point.
Okay.
I have no questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I move we adopt Ordinance 22-477.
Support.
Councilmember Walchuk,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
and Councilmember Noah.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next is the second reading of Ordinance 22-478, which amends Chapter 12, Blight, Article 1 in general by the addition of Section 12-8.
Once again, consistent with council policy, this would not be read a second time unless any of the individual members would like it to be read. Just asking for a vote, yay or nay at this point.
I move we adopt Ordinance 22-478.
Second.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilmember Noah,
Yes.
and Councilmember Walchuk.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And the last one is a first reading of Ordinance 22-479, which amends the City of Alpena zoning map.
This would be an amendment to the zoning map, and it would state as follows. The City of Alpena zoning ordinance map is hereby amended as follows. The parcel located at 933 Lockwood Street shall be conditionally rezoned from R-2 to R-T, and the statement of conditions shall be recorded with the Register of Deeds. The statement of conditions is as follows. This recently purchased property was represented and sold as a duplex. When the owner tried to register it, he was informed that it was a single-family residence, and he would like to get it conditionally rezoned so that it would be a legal duplex. This would also create additional housing stock or maintain housing stock within the city, which is something that we need. Section 2 is a severability clause. Section 3 is a saving clause. Section 4 states that the ordinance changes shall take effect upon the expiration of 7 days after publication of the notice of adoption.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any, I didn't drive by that location, but usually my only question is whether there's any kind of issue with parking for a duplex. Steve, do you know right off, or should I just go by there and take a look? Or?
This is Montiel. I'm online. So we have addressed parking with some additional paving, and there was a time limit given to address that. So right now there are very clearly 3 spaces available, and there will be an additional 4th space available, which is a requirement within the ordinance. But additional time was given to pave it because right now it is not paved.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And of course, this being the first reading, this will come back at our next regularly scheduled meeting for second reading and possible approval. Anybody else?
No other questions?
All right, communications and petitions. Our fire chief is here to give us an update on the DPI. Executive Panels International.
Good evening. Just giving you a quick update on Friday evening, about 6:30 or so, our units were called to DPI on multiple fires. Charlie has some slides up for us there. And you see an aerial picture of the far end of the DPI facility. When our units arrived, there was fire on 3 floors of the cooker tower on the far left, up and down the conveyor, on the plant roof under the conveyor, and in the conveyor building at the other end, plus in 6 of the material piles to the right. A lot of fire, a lot of wind that night, as you remember, and that wind-driven fire was very, very difficult to contain and to control. We got clear about 2 o'clock in the morning or so, and then continued to visit DPI every hour or two throughout the weekend, looking for changes in weather conditions and so forth. The buildings, of course, we put out, but the piles don't go out very easily. They take a long time, and they sometimes self-combust. The closer piles are good wood chips that they use in the manufacturing process. The farther piles, the more difficult ones, are in scrap, board, and material that has already been infused with the products that they use to make their board. And so extinguishing them was very difficult. On Sunday, there was a change of wind direction, and what had seemed bad enough when it was blowing out over the bay was now blowing across the north side and into downtown. At that point, the only material burning was wood, so there was no health nexus necessarily, and there was also no way to get it to go out any faster. They're going to smolder for an amount of time. Water has been applied to that fire continuously since 6:30 Friday night by DPI staff and also by firefighters as necessary. Thanks to the heavy rain that we had earlier today, that did help quite a bit. And at this point, there's some very minor smoldering in the 4 piles, and it should actually extinguish them in the next day or so, most likely. But I did want to let you know there was that haze of smoke on Sunday. A lot of folks were very concerned about it. We did put a press release out to alert the public that there was no danger at that particular time. Not to say not certainly an inconvenience, but no danger to the smoke. It wasn't chemical smoke or anything like that. And the DPI staff has been very cooperative and helpful throughout. So at this point, we're several days in and just about under control. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, our unfinished business is water production plant fluoridation, and Steve Schultz is here. City engineer.
Quick update. We kind of went through all the ordinance from previous meetings. Fluoridation in Michigan dates back to the first community to do it was Grand Rapids in 1945. And so following that, looking through our minutes, October 22nd of 1951, the council received just a letter urging that we should fluoridate, and it was just a receive and file at that time. The health officer in 1954 issued the same type of letter to council, which they just received and filed. And then Eagle has told us, based on their comprehensive report, they do a comprehensive report about our entire system and all the things of note that they know of. And in 1958 is when we started fluoridating our system. Other than that, there's been no mention of fluoridation of any type that I can find in any meeting minutes since then.
Okay. All right.
It just, I don't know whether it was somebody just decided to start doing it because that was what we're supposed to do, and I'm not sure.
And that's fair enough. It was a long time ago. And just an update for anyone, we've been over this topic for several months now, and we're just kind of collecting as much information as we can. And so this was one of the things we asked Rachel and her staff and Steve to do, is to try and find out as much about our local history with fluoridation as possible. So this was basically just an update of more information as we go.
And I guess currently, just so you're aware, we did receive our new pallet of fluoride, and after doing the calculations, they figure we're like into late fall, beginning of winter for this supply that we have right now. So.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. New business this evening is the ECHO program, and Chief Forbush is here for that as well.
Good evening again. Long time no talk to. The ECHO program, as you may recall, is a program that puts one firefighter paramedic in an advanced life support equipped SUV in the western Alpena County area on weekdays from 8 to 5. It's a cooperative effort between the city, county, and the 4 participating townships, Long Rapids, Maple Ridge, Green, and Wilson. It makes sure that there is a response, because sometimes during the business day, the volunteer firefighters may not be as available. A lot of them are working and such. And it also reduces the ALS response time to those communities by about 50%. So in exchange for that, the participating townships pay a fee, a small fee, but a fee to the city for that service. And at the end of that workday each day, that employee is returned back to city headquarters. When the staffing shortages befell us this year, I had a couple of calls from the participating communities who were very concerned that because our staffing was down, we would be unable to provide that service as we have for the past number of years. And in fact, we are 7 positions short of full staff right now and having a heck of a time trying to find anybody. But we do still have enough people to provide the necessary services in all areas at the same time. So in preparation for our life support agency license renewal, we thought it would probably be a good time to re-up that agreement because it hadn't been renewed or re-signed in a number of years. We are not proposing any increase at this time. We aren't proposing any change in terms. We're just looking to do the same thing we've been doing. But since the agreement did expire, at least officially, we thought it would be good to re-up that. 3 of the 4 communities have already signed the addendum extending the time period. Bill provided us with some language that allows it to auto-renew now if nobody cancels it. And we just wanted to bring it to your attention and get your consent to continue doing what we've been doing for about 10, 11 years now.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief before he sits down?
No, just a comment. I think this is probably one of the best programs that we've ever done. I mean, this is taking knowledge and using cooperation with all those outlying outside communities just to provide a service and save lives. So I thank you for your staff and putting this together.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to sign the ECHO program contracts. It's a contract, right?
It's an addendum to the contract, yes, sir.
I move we approve the interlocal agreement for advanced life support amendment with Green, Maple Ridge, Wilson, and Long Rapids Townships.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilmember Nowak?
Yes.
Councilmember Walczak?
Yes.
And Mayor Walagora?
Aye.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, next is the Downtown Alpena Alleyway Project, and DDA Director Ann Gentry is here.
So earlier in May, Rachel Smolinski and I organized a meeting with stakeholders and business owners along the alleyway that runs between 2nd and 3rd Avenue in downtown Alpena to discuss how the closure to automobile traffic went last year and brainstormed a plan for this year. There were 10 business owners in attendance, along with Rachel, Chief Forbush, and Andy Marceau from the fire department, and myself. I also received some feedback via email and conversations with stakeholders unable to attend. Some of the key pieces of feedback discussed from last year's closure. So last year, the small bike racks that blocked the alleyway off on 2nd and 3rd Avenue were frequently moved, and cars frequently continued to drive through the alleyway since those were so lightweight to move. Automobiles entering off of 2nd and 3rd Avenue continue to pose a safety threat to pedestrians either walking or biking through the alleyway. Access to the dumpsters that are kept near the back entrances of the buildings need access until they can be moved to another location. One suggestion was to relocate them to a parking stall in that lot, but no plan for management has been developed from the businesses that have those dumpsters. The handicap parking spaces near the back of the pocket park are frequently used and important for patrons to access those nearby businesses. Without the furniture being placed in the alleyway, it was not used that much last summer as a gathering space. And a long-term plan for resurfacing needs to be redeveloped, as there are many uneven areas that become especially hazardous during the winter months. And either Steve or Rachel can comment on this once I'm finished. In general, the business and property owners near the alleyway are supportive of closing it to automobile traffic for both the safety of patrons and its possibility as a beautified gathering space. There's still a few hurdles and issues such as handicap parking, resurfacing, and trash removal that will require more discussion and planning to close the entire alleyway, but we have developed a plan for this summer that would address some of the issues from last year while still making incremental changes to redevelopment as a vibrant gathering space. Attached with this memo, there was an overview of our proposal to close the alleyway to automobile traffic from July 1st through November 1, 2022, based on weather, of course. So I won't read this plan verbatim, but I'll just hit over some of the high points of it that we're proposing. So as you know, this has been something that's been talked about for years. I think there's a plan even from the 80s in my office to close it and make it a more pedestrian-friendly space. So for this year, we're proposing to close it from 3rd Avenue to the back of the patio behind Hopside Brewery, and then from 2nd Avenue, the length of the center building. So automobiles would still be able to enter through the parking lot and access the dumpsters that are behind the center building, mangoes and soaps and such, until a plan can be developed to relocate them, and those handicap spaces behind the pocket park until there's also a plan to relocate those. This year, we're proposing to purchase and plant large planters that would block off automobile traffic on the inside of the alleyway. So these planters would be around 60 pounds, so they'd be a little bit more cumbersome to move than last year's bike racks, but they could be moved in an emergency if need be. And then we are also proposing to purchase smaller planters that would be placed inside the alleyway to make it more welcoming. And we have a commitment from business owners to keep those watered this year. We also rent tables and benches through Lefebvre Properties that we place in those sections in the alleyway. Some of them are currently in Culligan Plaza, but we have 4 tables left and 4 benches that could be repurposed into those areas until we have a plan possibly for next year to repurchase newer ones that would fit in there. We also I discussed with Andy Marceau, who cleared it with Chief Forbush, about using the concrete barriers that were used last year in between the parking lot and the alleyway to put those back in there, but also use them to block off automobile access at 2nd and 3rd Avenue. So those would be the primary blocks off the street, and the planters would be on the interior. This year, we're also planning to take a little bit more active role in managing the alleyway as the DDA, and any events or gatherings will still need to go through the normal event process as it currently is with the city. So for this year, we are proposing to approve the closure of the alleyway as described from July 1st through November 1st, weather permitting, and then some of the details about resurfacing might change that, and then to place the large cement barriers in between the row of parking spaces and in the 2 alleyway closure points. It would also be wonderful to have some trash bins in the alleyway. I know Rachel and I have talked about this discussion on garbage removal downtown, but we could work together to come up with a plan to empty those. But because of the social district and the eating establishments that are near there, we expect those would be a necessary addition in there as well. Lastly, we would send out a PSA and alert the downtown businesses of the closure and really work to try to encourage people to use that as a gathering space this year. And Montiel and I have identified a few different funding opportunities. One of them is the Michigan Municipal League Bridge Builders Microgrants, which just opened, but this would be for next year. And it's based on an online voting platform. So, if we approve it this year and it's successful and we want to get more permanent infrastructure or other things to place in there, whether they be lights, different furniture, things like that. I think that could be a really great project. And the Community Foundation grants for community impact or Women's Giving Circle run each year as well, that the DDA would be eligible. And there's always the Patronicity Public Spaces, Community Spaces, which would be kind of a more long-term goal if there's other needs for that alleyway. So also with my packet, I included 2 overviews of what it would look like. So the 2 sections that we're proposing to close, and then just a kind of rough layout. This is not to scale of how big the furniture would be, but where the 2 concrete barriers would go on the edges, and then the planters, and then the benches and umbrella tables that would be placed in there as well. Rachel or Steve, you want to comment on the resurfacing needs as part of this?
I was still looking at the.
Yeah.
Shannon has worked with several local contractors, and we're going to run something through the patching contract, and we have resurfacing money left from this year, and we're actually ready to go probably with a news release tomorrow morning and start work first thing on Wednesday morning, and have the alley repaved in its entirety, fixing drainage issues and fixing any trip hazards, that type of thing. Probably by the weekend it would be open. And it's just the commitment of our local contractors and just being able to get everybody there at the same time and get some stuff done. It's coordinating a few DPW workers and some trucks and some local contractors to get the job done. So that's what we'd like to do, and that's all kind of pending the vote tonight. If that does go through, the whole alley would be paved from end to end, fixing all the potholes and things that have been there throughout the years, and fixing drainage issues and things like that. So.
That's great to hear. I was going to suggest that either we plant fish or fix the holes. Glad that we're moving in that direction. I will say, if you're ready for comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, sir. Last year when this first came before council, I was excited about it. I was a little disappointed how it turned out. I saw a lot of people moving it, but I thought it created more confusion than it did actually create placemaking, which what I was looking for. So I'm excited to hear that we're going to get more benches, tables, those type of things down in that area to make it look like it has a purpose for us closing it. I think I did see the planter or the bike rack get moved quite a bit last year and cars go through because I think there was a lot of confusion. I think planters are going to be a great idea. I'm glad that you're more involved in the managing of it and trying to really truly turn it into a placemaking. And I'm excited to see it get used. I'm very excited to see it get fixed. But,
Me too. That was a very pleasant surprise.
But I think that, I'm willing to definitely give it another year, and really let us turn it into something that is going to be useful for the downtown. It reminds me years ago, just prior to getting on council, there wasn't much in our downtown area. And I believe that this area, we throw a stone and the ripple effect is going to carry through the city so we can get everything else fixed up and continue to make our downtown expand. So I think this is a good project, and I just wanted to let council know exactly where we're standing on that. So, okay.
I do have is it okay?
Oh, absolutely.
You did interrupt. This is the same place where local bands sometimes come and play. Would that continue, those sorts of things?
Yeah, so Fresh Palette has approval for, I think, 3 or 4 alleyway parties. And Eric and his team, of course, is totally on board for this. So we would just need to coordinate if they needed to move furniture, because sometimes they bring in like stages and whatnot. So they said they'd be willing to do that, but would probably appreciate the seating in there. And then depending how it goes to, we would discuss with the street performers about having, them have music in there as well.
And lighting, would there be?
There was
kind of dark.
Yeah, there was interest in like twinkle lights or something like that. Probably for this summer wouldn't be doable, but I think, depending how it goes, that could be an investment we could.
As in solar lighting?
Yeah, kind of like the string lights above that, you see downstate and all that.
Very festive.
So, yeah.
It's a good idea. I think last year we expected business owners to put, little seating areas out, and that didn't happen. So, if we can facilitate getting something in there, maybe it'll be used more. So I think it's a good idea if we can get participation.
Look at it as a plus for improvement of the social district and kind of things like this to promote that more.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Nothing left to say, I guess.
Great.
That's fine. I've been on a DDA subcommittee for almost 10 years. And there's been plans to shut down the alley all the way to the all the way to the Harborside Mall, and we've just never really gotten anywhere. So I've always been supportive of it. It's fine. Thank you.
Has there been relatively good feedback on this? Have you heard? Yeah.
Yeah, I think pretty much all the businesses along there are want it shut down. The main hurdles are still the dumpsters, but some of those tenants would love to move them. It's just where do they go, and having a joint system to manage it. No one's really stepping up to want to take that on, but
it would still be part of the social district too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but I haven't heard any negativity from the businesses about closing it at all.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Make a motion to approve this.
Yep. I think that, is there a couple?
Motion that we approve the closure of the alleyway as described from July 1st, 2022 through November 1st, 2022. And to place those cement barriers in between the rows of parking spaces and the alleyways as they were placed last year.
Second.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilmember Nowak,
Yes.
Councilmember Walchuk,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Motion carried.
Bill, do you need anything on the work that on the paving work, or is that just a supplement to a contract we already have?
Right, it's a, yep, pre-existing contract.
Okay. All right, I think we're good. We're good.
I move we,
Motion that our next meeting is on Tuesday, July 5th, instead of a Monday. So everybody's aware of it.
Sure, our next meeting is July.
same time.
Yes, same station.
Thank you.
With that being said, I move we adjourn. Third.
Fourth.